that you research those topics at least a little bit to get the vocabulary and terminology down. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That was great. Okay, before we go into the Q&A, and we have about 10 minutes, which is great for both Howard and Chris. I just wanted to tell people that even though the galleries are closed upstairs, the bookstore is open, and there is the exhibition catalog for the exhibition Haunted is on sale at a reduced rate, 50% off, so maybe you want to take advantage of that. So we do have some time for questions. Anybody?
Thank you to both speakers for your super interesting contributions. Chris, I'm really glad that you mentioned the topic of up-resing, because we've experienced over the, or quite recently actually, that artists whose standard definition works we have had in our collection for a time, works from the 1990s, that artists want to revisit their works and up-res them to a high-res, and then resell that high-definition copy to us for a special price, of course. Artists like, and I'm just putting these names out there because they're very, well-known and very into the technical side of video as well, and should probably know about what you just talked about. Artists like Bill Viola or Peter Campus who want to, up-res their works. And I'm really glad that we all just saw in picture, in image, the proof that we're not gaining any more information than was produced back in the 1990s. And in the West, we're probably just producing these artifacts or softening to it that is actually not part of the authentic image. Another thing that I'm taking out of your talk, Chris, is a huge confusion about formats in HD, and I think maybe it's a little bit comparable to the time around the early 80s where so many analog tape formats were competing before VHS made the run and was superior to Video 2000 and a lot of other formats that were around. And it really shows to us how market-driven this whole theme is, and for the art world and the museums world, it's really super hard now to buy high definition works, and artists are producing in all sorts of, in like all these different formats you just saw there. Artists are using them, and every video work that is coming in now is basically high definition. It's a different high definition format all the time. It's really hard for us to keep up with the speed of changes in technology and ask for the right master formats. And I would actually want to ask that question to you. Am I doing a mistake if I'm asking them for HDCam SR tapes as archival masters and 10-bit uncompressed files? Do you have better suggestions for HD master formats?
Well, I wanted to respond to the first point too, but I'll answer the second one first. I think that one is, I say, there's at the web page that Howard referenced, digitalpreservation.gov, there's a great section that focuses on sustainability factors and how to assess formats, and it's in the context of file-based formats, but it's equally applicable to pretty much anything you can adopt it to. And actually, we did a paper on wrappers and codecs that's published on our website that goes into, in the context of wrappers and codecs, how to apply sustainability factors and ways to address that. So there is no single answer. There's not, I mean, it really depends on a combination of the infrastructure of the organization which is acquiring it, So your accessibility to the format that you're acquiring, like access is obviously key. You want to be able to, in order to do collection management, you have to be able to have access. So, you know, that's an important consideration. And of course, that's what expertise do you have access to? What's your technical infrastructure? Or at least what technical infrastructure do you have access to?
But no one has HD equipment in-house, and you have to go to...
That's right. So if you think about vendors, then then the question becomes, well, what do your vendors have? Because they don't necessarily have any HD format. You know, there may be specific ones that they can support.
But in terms of compression, you know, what's a good format for now to go to? Of course, it should be widely distributed, as you know, the G-beta for standard definition. And maybe we have to point that out. I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but you can't use digital Betacam tapes for high definition. It only holds standard definition videos. So that's where my question is coming from. Because in the SD world, in the standard definition world, you know, we are very confident with digital Beta. It's all over the place and well established, but for HD, we are not there yet. Maybe in 10 years' time we don't have to have this discussion, but the market is simply not there yet.
Yeah, I'd say regardless of the distribution format, I think uncompressed is what we'd like to always get. That's, you know, as our ideal is what we have over here. However, repositories or archives are in the mood with Born Digital more by necessity than by choice to have to accept whatever comes in the door, because you could set a submission standard, chances of it being met are probably not high. But however, having said that, I would say that collaboration with the artist on trying to, you know, I think you should decide what your ideal formats are for your institution, and that if you have input into the process to do that. If you don't have control and you get what you get, then you start looking at obsolescence monitoring. Do you migrate? Is it a really esoteric and proprietary format that you want to migrate out of immediately? Or is it something that has fairly wide adoption? There's lots of tools to work with. Your vendor has access to it that you feel comfortable holding on to and assessing it on a routine basis.
Can we try to take one more question?
Sure. Let me just make a quick response to that. The other thing is you really want to try to get the best quality out of the artist from the very start. You know, the highest quality that you can take in yourself and support. So for the up-res kind of question, if not specifically for SD to HD, but if you had originally gotten something on a DVD highly compressed, you wouldn't have many choices unless you got that as the exhibition copy, but you got their original uncompressed files in the first place. As we get better display devices, as you get better ability for displaying things in different ways, the idea of having gotten the very best quality that you can support over a period of time is where we really need to be at with the artists.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, but I just want to respond to that first point that feeds off of what Howard just said, is that these artists that are saying you know, depending on what they have and what they gave you. So if they gave you something that what they shot as anamorphic or was on film, and then they created a standard definition 4:3 deliverable to you, then it's feasible that they could go back to an original that's either on film that regardless of aspect ratio they could digitize at a higher resolution, or if it's anamorphic and it was cropped when they gave it to you, give you as a widescreen. But so that feeds into the point that what Howard talked about is when you originally acquire pieces, you want to be getting that stuff. You want the highest resolution. You want the originals upon acquisition of the.
Yeah, and you might, you know, the further upstream you can go, the better. Even though you may not ever use it, you know. So as I mentioned, the edit decision lists, the elements that they used to assemble it all, as Chris pointed out, those could have been in some kind of very robust type of format that is relatively sustainable, like film. and then that can be used to remix it later according exactly to their edit decision list to recreate it in a more robust format later.
Okay, one more question.
I just wanted to comment on Joanna's comment. What we found out is in many cases we prefer to get whatever the... Oh, sorry. My name is Patricia Falcão and I'm working at the Tate in time-based media conservation. What we came across is when we started asking for uncompressed files or stuff like that to artists who didn't have the experience, we ended up having very weird things. So right now what we are coming to is, okay, just give us what you edited on, and if we have to migrate something, then we'll just do it when we get it. But at least we know how we did it and how consistent that is. While, well, yeah.
So are you asking for Final Cut projects?
Or the exports for that. But if it's DV, it's better than a very weird uncompressed format that you have to do a very long Google search to find anything about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, if it was all created in DV, you would want, so I mean, you have, yeah, if it's all created in DV, you don't want them to create uncompressed, that'd be like upres and you don't gain anything, and it's higher storage capacity requirements.
Exactly. So it's usually, that's what my experience told me. It's, we don't have a lot of experience with high definition. We're starting to have problems in trying to figure out what to do with it. We're using D5 for most of the archiving, so we can still do HD5 for some of the formats. I just came across one case where I couldn't do, I can't remember why it is. I think it was a sound issue.
And just to be clear, if you are specifying that you want uncompressed files, you need to actually not just say uncompressed, you have to actually specify which codec you want. So which encoding is used to do that. That will, I mean, we ran into it with the server, right? It could only place certain things. I have the red light hitting me in the face. So.
Okay.
And then, sorry, can I just comment something on, that Howard said? I just have an issue. I guess it depends on whether you're an archive or a museum, and it's certainly interesting to know how an artist worked. But on the other hand, I see it almost as historically relevant, whether I got a really bad DV tape that somebody edited at home. So I find it a bit on the border when you think, you know, if you're a very young artist and you're editing, even if you manage to scan your film and you're editing a DV, isn't it also part of how it is made? And isn't it a bit on the border to go back and want to...
No, absolutely. And, you know, there's some parts of this is the kind of archival side to it, and it's the, you know, what was the process and understanding the process. But, you know, as Mona has said this morning and has been a leading advocate, if we don't understand the process, if we don't understand the process that they went through, it becomes hard after they're dead to try to keep it going to keep the kinds of transformations that we will have to go through to play it in the future on the devices that are the only ones that we have. That will be very difficult if we don't understand the processes that they went through. So in that respect, I think it's still very important to have at minimum documentation of what those processes were, and if you can support those elements and keeping those elements, those can offer you great insight, as Mona showed you, or no. As Joanna showed, just being able to look at the data on a tape that shows the various times that tape was copied, so you can see how many generations. You lose things like that when you transform from one space to another, that you can actually see on those if you've kept the original material.
All right. What time should we be back, Dara? We're back at 2:30? Okay, so back at 2:30, and I want to thank the speakers from this morning's session.